WGN's Bronner Tumulty was in federal court today, and she has more on the story.
Good evening, guys. We have been following the case of Jerry Harris for quite some time. He was to plead not guilty to the charges against him, but today he changed that plea. Jeremiah Harris, known more commonly as Jerry, a former star of the Netflix series Cheer, pleading guilty to sex crimes today in federal court. A 7-count indictment was filed against him in December of 2020, alleging sexual misconduct across a trio of states. As part of a deal, Harris entered a guilty plea on 1 count of receipt of child pornography and another of travelling with intent to engage in illicit sexual conduct. Prosecutors say if this case had gone to trial, their evidence would have shown that back in the summer of 2020, while Harris was living in his hometown of Naperville, he communicated with a minor whom he knew was under 18 via Snapchat, repeatedly asking for photos of a sexual nature. With respect to the second charge, it stated Harris travelled from Dallas to Orlando in May of 2019 for the purpose of engaging in sexual conduct with a 15-year-old whom he asked to meet in a public bathroom. After ensuring Harris was fully competent and aware of what he was admitting to, the judge today accepted his plea. The defence team in the case releasing a statement to WGN a short time later, saying the criminal conduct took place in the context of a competitive cheer community where inappropriately sexualizing and sexually abusing children was far too common and too often overlooked. Jerry was himself exploited, manipulated and sexually abused as a child within the cheer community in a way that perversely made him believe that this sexual conduct was somehow normal when it was not. That statement goes on to say Harris has been in therapy since his incarceration in October of 2020, which he spoke of today in court, telling the judge he's been seeing psychologists at the correctional facility here in Chicago where he's being held. Again, that plea package involves the prosecution asking the judge to sentence Harris on those 2 counts only. The count of child porn here in Illinois carries a minimum of 5 years in prison and a max of 20 years. The second charge in relation to travel between Texas and Florida carries a maximum term of 30 years behind bars. Sentencing has been set for June 28th.
Okay, so y'all just heard that right here, and some of you may not have been around on my channel when I first talked about this story back in 2020, and I forget which part of 2020 I talked about it because, like I said, there was a lot of stuff going on at that time. I want to say it was in the spring or maybe the summer. I can't exactly pinpoint when it was, but the reason why I actually found out about this update is because when I was in the gym this morning, and, you know, doing my cardio, I just happened to look up and I saw that his image up there. I said, oh, that's that guy from that show that was on Netflix. I had did a video about him. And then I saw that this was the update that they came with. So my first thought when I first heard about this, I said, he's taking a plea deal. He's taking a plea deal. And y'all heard what they said in the news clip. He started out pleading not guilty, even though he had admitted to what he did. And there's more than mountains of evidence to prove and back up his admittance. Like he actually did what he was of. He admitted what he was accused of back then and pled not guilty. And when he comes now with this guilty plea, I said he's going for the plea deal, or his attorneys are saying go for the plea deal, go plead guilty, and that way you can get a plea deal and possibly get a lesser sentence. Like y'all heard what this guy was doing. He traveled from to various states to go meet up with people that he knew were minors. It's not like they lied to him and said that he didn't know and he was blindsided. He knew that they were underage and was doing, and he was still engaging in that particular act, as well as getting nude images of minors as well. So that's where the child pornography charges kick in. Those are some pretty hefty charges that he's receiving. And when I saw this, and then I saw the people they were interviewing when I was looking at the news clip when I was in the gym, and pretty much all of not the accusers, but the ones connected to the accusers were all PC. I said, yeah, they gonna railroad him. They gonna throw him way under the bus. And I can't bring myself to say that I feel bad for him. I can't. Now I have 2 questions. One, is Me Too gonna talk about this? Probably not, because while he is a black man, he's also in the academy. So that pretty much almost negates question number 2, but I'll just ask it anyway. Those who came after people like Bill Cosby, are they going to talk about him? Is Kamal Bell going to do a documentary about Jerry Harris? Most likely not, because he doesn't fit the mold. He fits in their eyes the description because he's a black man, but he doesn't fit the mold entirely because of his lifestyle being attached to him. Although he definitely should be discussed way more. Like, this is the first update I've heard about Jerry Harris in over a year, damn near 2 years. I didn't even know he was locked up, honestly, because I only talked about him that one time when this story came up, and then we never talked about him again because there really wasn't any updates since then. I remember doing a story about this person who was a cheerleader or whatever the case may be. He was a black man down south, and he was messing around with his students. And what made his situation even worse than Jerry's is that he had HIV. And he was going around having unprotected sex with these minors, knowing he had HIV. So he was exposing himself willingly to all these individuals. That's what made his situation even worse. And that's one thing the Academy just refuses to talk about. That was the other one. Is the Academy going to talk about this? They have all this smoke for people, for, black men, heterosexual black men, and even to an extent, black women who don't want to sleep with or date bisexual men. Yes, they actually have started to call black women biphobic. I saw a tweet the other day where they said that, black women, they'll support the Academy and everything like that. But if you ask them, would they date a bisexual man, they turn into, who was it? Bootsy. See what I mean? But I have a feeling they're not going to talk about this either, because I have yet to see them talk about it. And this happened back in 2020. They'll talk about any and everything else, but they won't talk about the perverts in their community. And trust and believe, there's plenty to go around. Whether they are black, PC, or any other ethnic group. But since we're talking about black people, where their intent is about this, I'm like, well, you know what? Since if they didn't really talk about Ed Buck like that, then I know they're not going to talk about this. But like I said, they have all the smoke for other black people. Amazing. An amazing paradigm, isn't it? But that's pretty much the update right here when it comes to Jerry Harris. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. If you are new, make sure you go ahead and hit that bell so you can be notified every time I upload a new video or go live. One other thing I wanted to add in here is when his attorney gave that statement about Jerry Harris being abused sexually as a child. And while that is a very serious topic to touch on, my question is this: where was that statement back when he pled not guilty back in 2020? If that was the case, they could have used that as leverage somewhat back then. And how ironic that now they said, oh, we're going to plead guilty now because they saw them charges and they knew what would happen, and to get a reduction. And then this statement just kind of comes up. Someone who was abused like that as a child would never forget that for as long as they live. And how it just magically appeared now because they switched up to this guilty plea, but it was non-existent when he pled not guilty. Like, that right there gives me a side eye. Not saying that it didn't happen to him, but if they wanted to use some kind of leverage, they could have inserted that in there somehow, some way back then when he pled not guilty, and not just slip it in here all of a sudden now that he pleads guilty to try to garner sympathy.